The polished silver of her Distinguished Service medal reflected the distorted image of Officer Kalen's hate-filled face, his weapon pressed so hard against General Anya Sharma's temple that a searing pain shot through her skull. Anya's breath hitched, not from fear, but from a profound, bone-deep sorrow that this desecration was happening here, at the solemn final farewell for her nephew, a young pilot whose life had been dedicated to the very ideals this officer now trampled. Cameras flashed, a frantic, predatory pulse in the stunned silence of the memorial park. Officer Kalen, his face contorted and spittle flying, screamed epithets that clawed at the dignity of the occasion, slurs that echoed the ugliest undercurrents of a society Anya had sworn to protect and elevate. The honor guard, men and women of diverse backgrounds who had served alongside her nephew, stood frozen, their training warring with the raw, visceral shock of witnessing such an assault on one of their own, on a figure of such national standing. Anya closed her eyes for a fleeting second, the image of her nephew's bright, hopeful smile burning behind her eyelids. "Not here," she whispered, her voice a low thrum of defiance that barely cut through Kalen's tirade. "Not like this." Her hand, steady despite the tremor in her soul, moved instinctively towards the crisply folded flag, the emblem of a nation her family had served for generations. Kalen's finger visibly tightened on the trigger, his knuckles white. A collective gasp rippled through the mourners. Before this powder keg of hatred and grief could fully ignite, tell us, where are you watching this unfold from? If you believe that no one, especially those in uniform, should be above the principles of respect and justice, hit that like button and subscribe. Because the story of General Sharma's courage in the face of such blatant bigotry is far from over, and the battle for accountability has only just begun. What dark forces led to this horrifying public assault, and can a single individual truly stand against a tide of entrenched prejudice? Stay with us. 3 days before the memorial park would become a stage for such a shocking confrontation, General Anya Sharma watched the sprawling cityscape emerge from the morning haze as her government jet began its descent. The mission was a somber one: to finalize arrangements for her nephew, Captain Rian Sharma, a brilliant aerospace engineer whose experimental aircraft had inexplicably malfunctioned during a routine domestic test flight. The official report cited catastrophic mechanical failure, but a nagging disquiet had settled in Anya's gut, a feeling honed by decades of navigating complex, often treacherous, institutional landscapes. Rian, meticulous to a fault, had expressed concerns in his last call, vague unease about local interference with his project, about old guard elements at the provincial airfield who seemed resistant to his team's presence and their advanced, federally mandated technology. Anya, a pioneer in her own right, the first woman of her heritage to achieve such a high rank in the nation's unified forces, knew the insidious ways prejudice could manifest, how it could curdle into obstruction and worse. She'd battled it her entire career, subtly and overtly, and had always impressed upon Rian the importance of meticulous documentation and unwavering professionalism as his best shield. As she disembarked, her uniform, a symbol of her dedication and achievement, drew the usual mixture of respect and, in some eyes, a barely concealed resentment. At the prearranged security pass-through for high-ranking officials, Officer Kalen, the same officer who would later desecrate her nephew's funeral, was on duty. His gaze lingered on her, cold and appraising. "General Sharma," he said, his tone flat, devoid of the standard courtesy. "Unusual to have top brass handling these local matters personally." Anya met his stare. "My nephew was not just an officer, he was family, and his work was of national importance." Kalen's lips thinned.
"Right.
"We'll need to do a full secondary screening. New directives." He gestured vaguely. It was a deliberate slight, a bureaucratic power play she recognized instantly. The new directives were a fiction, designed to inconvenience and assert dominance. For nearly an hour, she was subjected to a series of redundant checks, her credentials scrutinized with exaggerated suspicion, her personal attaché case opened and its contents, including sensitive preliminary notes on Rian's project, unnecessarily exposed. It was a calculated display of disrespect, a clear message that her rank meant little on his turf. Her aide, a young, sharp lieutenant named Chen, fumed silently. "Ma'am, this is outrageous. I can file a formal complaint." Anya waved him off, her expression unreadable. "Later, Lieutenant. Some battles are chosen, others are endured for a larger purpose. Right now, Rian is the purpose." But as she left, Kalen's parting smirk was a chilling omen. She couldn't shake the feeling that his harassment was more than petty prejudice. It felt like a warning, a territorial display by someone who knew she was treading on dangerous ground. The local interference Rian had mentioned suddenly felt far more menacing. What do you think motivates individuals in positions of authority to abuse their power through such blatant acts of disrespect? Comment number 1 if you believe it's deep-seated prejudice, or number 2 if you think it's more about asserting dominance and control. Subscribe if you're ready to see how General Sharma begins to unravel the truth behind her nephew's death and this hostile reception. The weight of her nephew's loss was a physical ache, but General Sharma's mind, honed by years of strategic command, was already piecing together the disturbing fragments. Rian's guarded comments, the cold hostility from Officer Kalen, the inexplicable mechanical failure of a state-of-the-art aircraft, it all pointed to something more sinister than a tragic accident. In the quiet of her temporary official lodgings, she accessed Rian's secured personal server, a digital fortress he'd built with his characteristic ingenuity. Buried deep within encrypted files, she found his private logs. He had been documenting a pattern of obstruction and simmering resentment from a clique of local officials and airfield personnel, a group he'd dubbed the Old Sons, who seemed to view his federally backed advanced technology project as an intrusion and his team, composed largely of young, diverse specialists, as a threat to their established, antiquated ways. Rian wrote of subtle sabotage attempts on equipment, of vital data mysteriously vanishing from local servers only to be found later, corrupted, and of anonymous, vaguely threatening notes left on his team's workstations. He'd even photographed Officer Kalen meeting discreetly with the airfield's surly operations manager, a man known for his vocal opposition to federal overreach. Anya's blood ran cold. This wasn't just about prejudice. It was organized, and Rian had been getting too close to exposing it. Her aide, Lieutenant Chen, a tech-savvy officer Rian himself had recommended, worked diligently by her side, his fingers flying across a portable analysis unit. "General," Chen said, his voice tight. Captain Sharma was also tracking unusual financial transactions linked to the airfield supply contracts. Inflated invoices, payments to shell corporations, it looks like a deeply entrenched corruption ring, and they were siphoning funds meant for infrastructure and safety upgrades. Anya nodded slowly. And Rian's project, with its advanced oversight systems and transparent data logging, would have blown it all wide open. This network, these Old Sons, weren't just fighting progress. They were protecting a criminal enterprise. The mechanical failure of Rian's aircraft suddenly seemed chillingly deliberate. They hadn't just wanted him gone. They'd needed to silence him and perhaps send a message to anyone else from outside who might think of digging too deep. Her resolve hardened. This was no longer just about family grief. It was about justice, about dismantling a cancerous growth that had taken her nephew and was clearly prepared to defend itself with lethal force. She made a secure call to a trusted contact within the Federal Investigative Services, outlining her suspicions and requesting discreet support. The fight had just begun, and Anya knew the Old Sons would not remain idle once they realized she was picking up where Rian had left off. Do you believe that whistleblowers who expose corruption within their own institutions are heroes or traitors to their colleagues? Let us know your thoughts with comment number 1 for hero or number 2 for traitor. Hit that subscribe button because the Old Sons are about to realize General Sharma is a very different kind of threat. The Old Sons, as Rian had aptly named them, operated like a shadowy syndicate, their tendrils reaching from the provincial airfield into local government and law enforcement. Their leader, it appeared from Rian's cautious notes and Chen's digital forensics, was a man named Marcus Thorne, a seemingly benign local councilman with a carefully cultivated image of civic virtue. In reality, Thorne was the puppet master, pulling strings, dispensing favors, and ensuring the network's illicit activities remained shielded from scrutiny. Officer Kalen, it turned out, was Thorne's nephew and one of his most aggressive enforcers, tasked with intimidation and maintaining their order. News of General Sharma's probing inquiries, amplified by her high-profile arrival, had reached Thorne quickly. In the back room of a dimly lit local tavern, a frequent haunt for the old sons, Thorne convened his inner circle. "The general is becoming a problem," Thorne stated, his voice calm but laced with menace. "She's not here just for the funeral. She's been asking questions, accessing her nephew's files. Kalen, your little welcome at the airport seems to have piqued her interest." Kalen bristled. "She's an outsider. Thinks her rank gives her carte blanche here. She needed to be put in her place." Thorne's eyes narrowed. "Your place-putting might have accelerated things. She's military intelligence, Kalen, not some local journalist we can scare off with a few late-night calls. We need a more definitive solution." An older, heavy-set man, the airfield's operations manager, grumbled. Young Sharma was getting too close with his fancy computers. His little accident was supposed to close the book on that. And it would have, Thorne said smoothly, if his aunt wasn't a 4-star general with a direct line to the capital. "She's going to be at the Memorial Park for the ceremony. It will be a public event. Kalen, I want you and a select few of our most loyal officers on security detail. Create an incident. Something public, something humiliating. Discredit her. Make her look unstable, aggressive. We need to neutralize her influence before she can bring federal heat down on us." Kalen grinned, a predatory light in his eyes. "Consider it done, Uncle Marcus. A very public lesson is exactly what she needs." Meanwhile, General Sharma and Lieutenant Chen were working with Agent Ramirez, the federal investigator Anya had contacted. Ramirez, a seasoned operative with a reputation for tenacity, listened intently as Anya laid out Rian's findings and her own encounters. "This network, the Old Sons," Ramirez mused, "it has all the hallmarks of organized corruption protected by local enforcement. Your nephew was a brave man, General. And you're right, they will see you as a direct threat." Ramirez's team began discreet surveillance, confirming the meetings at the tavern, identifying key players. They also discovered that Kalen and several other officers with known ties to Thorne had indeed been assigned to the funeral detail, a move that screamed premeditation. The stage was being set for a confrontation, and Anya knew the Old Sons intended for it to be on their terms. When powerful individuals or groups feel threatened, they often resort to intimidation or character assassination. Have you ever witnessed or experienced such tactics? Share a general thought in the comments, yes or no. Don't forget to subscribe, as General Sharma prepares to walk into a carefully laid trap, but not without a plan of her own. The Memorial Park, usually a sanctuary of quiet reflection, felt charged with an undercurrent of menace as General Sharma arrived for her nephew's service. She noted Officer Kalen and a coterie of his thuggish colleagues positioned strategically, their presence more an occupation than a protective detail. Their eyes followed her every move, cold and unwavering. Anya, flanked by Lieutenant Chen and a grieving but resolute family, maintained a facade of stoic dignity, though every instinct screamed of the impending confrontation. Agent Ramirez and her federal team were also present, disguised amongst the mourners and media, their own cameras rolling, ready to document whatever the Old Sons had planned. The service began, a somber tribute to a life cut tragically short. When it was Anya's turn to speak, she stepped towards the dais, her voice clear and strong as she spoke of Rian's brilliance, his integrity, and his unwavering belief in progress and justice. "My nephew," she said, her gaze sweeping over the assembled crowd and lingering for a moment on Kalen, believed that service meant not just defending our nation, but also upholding the highest standards of honor within it. He was dedicated to truth, and he was not afraid to challenge those who operated in shadows, those who sought to pervert public trust for personal gain. As she spoke these words, a subtle signal passed between Kalen and his men. This was the moment the trap was sprung, the moment detailed in the opening of our story. As Anya reached for the folded flag, Kalen lunged forward, shoving aside the honor guard. "General Sharma, you're coming with me," he barked, his gun suddenly appearing, pressed brutally against her temple. The epithets, the spittle, the flash of cameras, it all exploded in a horrifying tableau of public aggression. "She's resisting. She's got a weapon," another of Kalen's officers shouted, a blatant lie designed to justify the assault. Chaos erupted. Mourners screamed. Anya, her mind racing, knew this was the public, humiliating incident Thorne had orchestrated. Despite the gun at her head, her training kicked in. She didn't struggle, didn't give them the image of an unstable, aggressive woman they craved. Instead, she met Kalen's gaze, her own filled not with fear, but with a chilling, righteous fury. "Officer Kalen," she said, her voice dangerously calm amidst the pandemonium, "you and your associates have made a grave miscalculation." Before Kalen could react further, Agent Ramirez and her team moved in, badges flashing. "Federal agents. Everyone stay back. Officer Kalen, release General Sharma and drop your weapon now." Kalen, momentarily stunned by the unexpected federal presence, hesitated. His men looked uncertain, their bravado faltering. It was the split second Anya needed. In a movement too swift for most to follow, she disengaged from Kalen's hold, a precise defensive maneuver that sent his gun skittering across the grass. Simultaneously, Ramirez's agents swarmed Kalen and his stunned cohorts, subduing them with professional efficiency. The entire orchestrated attack, designed to discredit Anya, had been caught on dozens of cameras, including the federal agents' own high-resolution equipment. The Old Sons had intended to frame a hero. Instead, they had exposed their own criminality to the world. If you witnessed an official abusing their power so openly, would you feel more inclined to record it as evidence? Option 1. Or to directly intervene if you felt able? Option 2. Comment your choice. This shocking confrontation is a turning point. Hit subscribe to see the Old Sons face the full force of federal justice. The aftermath of the aborted assault at the Memorial Park was swift and decisive. With Officer Kalen and his accomplices in federal custody, their faces plastered across national news, the carefully constructed facade of the Old Sons began to crumble. The video footage was damning. A decorated general, a woman of color, being accosted by a white officer spewing hateful rhetoric, then falsely accused of being armed, all during her nephew's funeral. The public outcry was immediate and immense. Councilman Marcus Thorne, watching the news from his opulent home, felt a knot of ice form in his stomach. His plan to humiliate General Sharma had backfired spectacularly, turning her into a symbol of resilience against corruption and bigotry, and shining an unwelcome national spotlight directly on him and his operations. Agent Ramirez, armed with the evidence from Rian's files, the footage from the funeral, and the initial testimonies of the apprehended officers, some of whom quickly began to crack under federal pressure, secured warrants for Thorne and other key members of the Old Sons. The raids were coordinated and executed with military precision. Federal agents descended upon Thorne's home, the Airfield Operations Office, and the back rooms of several local businesses known to be part of the network. Boxes of documents, computer hard drives, and illicitly obtained cash were seized. Thorne, attempting to maintain an air of outraged innocence, found his protests falling on deaf ears as he was led away in handcuffs. General Sharma, though deeply shaken by the ordeal, remained focused. She provided a full, detailed statement to Agent Ramirez, her testimony painting a clear picture of systemic corruption, racial animus, and a conspiracy that likely led to her nephew's death. Lieutenant Chen, whose quick thinking had ensured all of Rian's digital evidence was securely backed up and made available, proved invaluable to the federal team. The initial arrest sent shockwaves through the provincial administration. Officials who had once turned a blind eye to Thorne's activities or had benefited from his largesse now scrambled to distance themselves. The local police department, implicated by Kalen's actions and his clear insubordination to federal law, was placed under immediate review. Within days, The federal prosecutor's office announced a sweeping indictment against Thorne, Kalin, and a dozen other members of the Old Sons, charging them with conspiracy, corruption, aggravated assault, civil rights violations, and, pending further investigation into the aircraft incident, potentially more severe charges related to Captain Sharma's death. The fight for justice for Rian was far from over, but the first major blow against the entrenched network had been struck, thanks to Anya's courage and the undeniable evidence they had so arrogantly provided themselves. Do you believe that systemic corruption is more effectively tackled by internal whistleblowers or by external federal intervention? Type internal or federal in the comments. Make sure you're subscribed, because the legal battle is about to begin, and the Old Sons won't go down without a fight. The federal courthouse became the new battleground. The prosecution, led by a determined assistant United States attorney, methodically laid out the case against Marcus Thorne, Officer Kalin, and their co-conspirators. The evidence was overwhelming. Rian Sharma's meticulous logs, Lieutenant Chen's forensic analysis of the Old Sons, illicit financial dealings, the shocking video footage from the funeral, and the testimonies of several lower-level members of the network who had accepted plea deals in exchange for cooperation. General Anya Sharma took the stand, her presence commanding, her testimony unwavering. She recounted Rian's concerns, her own unsettling encounters with Kalin, and the blatant assault at the memorial park. Her quiet dignity and precise, factual recounting of events left a profound impact on the jury and the packed courtroom. "My nephew, Captain Rian Sharma," she stated, her voice resonating with controlled emotion, "was a patriot who believed in the integrity of our institutions. He uncovered a rot, a corruption that betrayed the very people it purported to serve. He paid for his dedication with his life." The actions of these defendants, culminating in the despicable attack at his funeral, were not just an assault on me, but an assault on the principles of justice and decency he championed. The defense attorneys, high-priced lawyers likely funded by the Old Sons' remaining illicit coffers, attempted to discredit General Sharma, suggesting she was emotionally overwrought, misinterpreting events due to grief, or even on a personal vendetta. They painted Officer Kalin as a dedicated officer reacting to a perceived threat in a high-stress situation, and Thorne as a misunderstood civic leader. But their arguments crumbled under the weight of the irrefutable video evidence and the corroborating testimonies. The footage of Kalin's snarling face, his hateful words, and the clear fabrication of a threat by his fellow officers played repeatedly, each viewing stripping away any semblance of credibility from the defense's narrative. Agent Ramirez detailed the intricate web of corruption, the shell corporations, the bid rigging for airfield contracts, and the slush funds used to maintain loyalty and silence dissent. She presented evidence that suggested the mechanical failure of Rian's aircraft was likely induced, pointing to tampered components and erased maintenance logs from the local airfield, though proving direct culpability for his death remained a complex challenge requiring further specialized investigation. The trial became a national spectacle, a referendum on accountability, prejudice, and the abuse of power. Support for General Sharma poured in from across the country, from veterans groups, civil rights organizations, and ordinary citizens disgusted by the blatant injustice. The Old Sons, once secure in their provincial fiefdom, now found themselves exposed and reviled on a national stage. When an individual with a strong moral compass confronts a corrupt system, what is the most powerful weapon they possess? Their personal integrity, option 1, or the ability to rally public support, option 2? Let us know your pick. Subscribe for the verdict and the sentencing. The moment of truth is fast approaching. The jury deliberated for less than a day. The verdicts came back like hammer blows, guilty on all major counts for Marcus Thorne, Officer Kalin, and the core members of their corrupt enterprise. Conspiracy, racketeering, deprivation of civil rights, aggravated assault. The list was long. While the direct charge of murder for Rian's death was still under separate investigation due to its technical complexity, the convictions effectively dismantled the Old Sons and held them accountable for their reign of terror and corruption. Officer Kalin, his face pale and drawn, showed no remorse, only a sullen disbelief that his badge and his connections had failed to protect him. Thorne attempted an air of stoic resignation, but the slight tremble in his hands betrayed his fear. At the sentencing hearing, the judge was unsparing. "Mr. Thorne," the judge began, his voice stern, "you were entrusted with public office, yet you systematically betrayed that trust, fostering a climate of corruption, intimidation, and prejudice. You preyed upon your own community and orchestrated heinous acts to protect your criminal enterprise." He sentenced Thorne to the maximum allowable under federal guidelines, ensuring he would spend decades behind bars. Then he turned to Kalin. "Officer Kalin, you took an oath to protect and serve. Instead, you became a violent enforcer for a corrupt syndicate. Your actions at the Memorial Park, your vile and hateful assault on General Sharma, a distinguished officer of our nation, while she was mourning her nephew, a nephew whose death your associates likely orchestrated, were an affront to every decent citizen and a stain upon the honor of law enforcement. You abused your authority in the most despicable way imaginable." Citing Kalin's utter lack of remorse, his history of aggressive behavior, unearthed during the investigation, and the profound trauma he inflicted, the judge delivered a sentence that resonated nationwide: life in prison without the possibility of parole. A gasp, then a wave of applause and emotional relief swept through the courtroom, quickly gavelled into silence by the judge. General Sharma watched, her expression composed but her eyes reflecting the immense emotional toll of the journey. This was justice hard-won for Rian, for herself, and for all those who had suffered under the old son's oppressive regime. The convictions sent a clear message: no one, regardless of their position or connections, was above the law. The federal investigation continued to expand, looking into the wider network and the specifics of Rian's aircraft sabotage, but the heart of the old sons had been ripped out. The dismantling of such a powerful local syndicate is a monumental task. Do you think the primary credit for their downfall belongs to the bravery of individuals like General Sharma and her nephew, vote 1, or to the robust mechanisms of the federal justice system, vote 2? Comment your view. Hit subscribe as we explore the lasting impact of this case and the reforms it sparked. The convictions and harsh sentences, particularly Kalin's life term, had a profound ripple effect. The provincial airfield was taken under direct federal management, its corrupt contracts voided, and its operations overhauled with new transparency and safety protocols. The local police department underwent a painful but necessary restructuring, with dozens of officers implicated in the old son's network forced to resign or face prosecution. A new chief, brought in from outside, was tasked with rebuilding community trust and implementing stringent anti-corruption and anti-bias training programs. General Anya Sharma, though she returned to her high-level duties in the capital, remained deeply involved in advocating for systemic reforms. She established the Captain Rian Sharma Foundation for Integrity in Public Service, an organization dedicated to supporting whistleblowers, promoting ethical leadership, and providing resources for those fighting corruption within local and provincial governments. Lieutenant Chun, recognized for his exceptional skills and courage, was promoted and assigned to a newly formed federal task force dedicated to investigating and prosecuting similar networks of corruption in other underserved or overlooked regions. Agent Ramirez continued her work, her reputation enhanced, taking on new cases with the same quiet determination. The separate investigation into Rian Sharma's death eventually uncovered irrefutable proof of deliberate sabotage orchestrated by Thorne's inner circle, directly linking them to the fatal crash. Additional charges of conspiracy to commit murder were filed against Thorne and 2 of his closest airfield associates, leading to further convictions and even longer sentences, ensuring they would never again threaten the public. The story of General Sharma's stand against the old sons, of Officer Kalin's shocking assault and his ultimate accountability, became a case study in leadership academies, law schools, and ethics seminars. It highlighted the dangers of unchecked local power, the insidious nature of systemic prejudice, and the extraordinary courage it takes for individuals to confront entrenched corruption. The Memorial Park where the assault occurred was later expanded, with a new wing dedicated to victims of abuse of power and those who fought for justice. It served as a reminder that even in moments of profound grief and vulnerability, the fight for what is right must continue. Anya often visited, finding a measure of peace in the quiet dignity of the place, a place where a moment of profound darkness had ultimately paved the way for a brighter, more just future. Reflecting on this entire ordeal, what do you believe is the most critical element needed to successfully dismantle a corrupt system? Courageous leadership, option A, unwavering public demand for accountability, option B, or strong, independent investigative bodies, option C? Share your thought, A, B, or C. And if these stories of resilience and justice inspire you, please like this video and subscribe for more narratives that challenge and uplift. General Anya Sharma's harrowing experience and her unyielding pursuit of justice serve as a powerful testament to the resilience of the human spirit when confronted by profound adversity. This narrative underscores the critical truth that corruption and prejudice often fester in the shadows, protected by silence and complicity, but they cannot withstand the combined force of courage, truth, and unwavering public scrutiny. The actions of Officer Kalin were not an isolated incident of one bad apple, but rather a symptom of a deeper, systemic rot within the Old Sun's network, a rot that prioritized illicit gain and prejudiced power over public service and human decency. The story demonstrates that true strength is not found in aggression or intimidation, but in steadfast adherence to one's principles, even at great personal risk. Captain Rian Sharma's bravery in documenting the corruption, General Sharma's refusal to be silenced or intimidated, Lieutenant Chen's loyal and skillful support, and Agent Ramirez's diligent investigation all played crucial roles. It highlights that systemic change is rarely the work of one individual alone, but rather the result of a coalition of principled actors working in concert. The ultimate conviction of Thorne and the life sentence for Kalin send an unequivocal message. Accountability is possible, even against those who seem untouchable. It reminds us that our institutions, when wielded by individuals of integrity, can indeed serve justice. However, it also implies the constant need for vigilance, for ordinary citizens and dedicated public servants alike to remain watchful and to speak out against injustice wherever it appears. The path to reform is often long and arduous, paved with sacrifice and fraught with danger, but as General Sharma's story shows, it is a path worth treading. Her journey from grieving aunt to a catalyst for sweeping change illustrates that from great personal tragedy can emerge a powerful force for the greater good, inspiring others to find their own courage and to demand better from those in power. What is one key takeaway from this story that resonates most with you personally regarding the fight against injustice or corruption? Share your reflection in the comments below. If you believe in the power of storytelling to illuminate truth and inspire action, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel for more compelling narratives, and share this story with others who need to hear it. Thank you for joining us on this journey. May we all find the strength to stand for what is right, even when it is difficult, knowing that our collective voices can indeed bring about a more just world.